You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In this show, we go beyond the campfire stories to bring you firsthand encounters from people who say they've seen something impossible, from backwoods trails and remote mountain haulers to quiet farms and crowded highways. The stories come from everywhere, and each one leaves us with more questions than answers. These are the voices of the people who've lived it, so settle in, because today you'll hear another account that just might change the way you see the woods forever. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to John today. John is an outdoorsman and amateur filmmaker who reached out to me about some things he's experienced and maybe even heard from Southern California. So welcome to the show, John. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing okay. How you doing, Jeremiah? Thank you for having me in advance here. It's good to be able to share a few things here with you.
Absolutely. The area of Southern California doesn't get brought up a lot on the show, so it's exciting to have you on to hear what is going on down there. I think maybe the most we've heard down there is Crestline and Lake Arrowhead has come up a few times down there by San Bernardino, but I'm sure there's more going on than just that for sure.
Oh yeah, it's just in silly terms, I call it like a little desert triangle, because where you just mentioned is just about west of me. And it's just this thing that happens this often. But for starters, from back what you said right now, I was the same way. I didn't know. And it wasn't until later on, and we'll get into that, where it was like looked at the Bigfoot map online. I'm not sure if it was BFRO, but I think it's just the Bigfoot map. But yeah, there's dots all over the place, all through here. And then that obviously opened up the wormhole. And it's pretty cool, actually. It goes all the way back to the 60s and stuff. So it's wild. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what got you into the subject to begin with, John?
It's silly, and I'm glad that we're having this episode here, because one thing before we get started, every time I'm a huge fan of this, and it didn't start like that at all, but just in a nutshell. But I noticed that anytime, when the desert came up, I don't know, I set my fork down when I'm listening to the show. I'm like, desert Sasquatch. I heard that a few different times, and it was like something that just never got expanded on, and I was just fascinated by that. I was telling myself early on, does that mean there's rogue ones out here? Are there families? There couldn't be families, because there's not a whole lot of places to hide. And then anyway, so it just definitely opened up a big wormhole for once you see all those little dots show up on the map. But for me, in short, it was back I'm in my 40s or whatever, but way back 80s and 90s, we would always overhear my pops and my uncle kind of talking about this Proctor Valley place, Proctor Valley. The only thing I knew at the time was Harry and the Hendersons, maybe. I don't even think that was out yet, but we'd always hear about this place called Proctor Valley. That was the first creepy kind of sign of any sort of weird activity like that. And they would always mention how people would go out there and party. I'm pretty sure it's all homes now, but there was always creepy stories like that, big things that people would see out there. And that right away always kept my ears up. But after that, even then, as a kid and getting into my teenage years, I was always pretty adamant about it. That sort of thing, if it even exists, is only going to be up in NorCal. I've heard a lot of your guests say that before, and that was me too. I was like, I only thought NorCal. And anyways, life just glitches and does what it does, especially being in SoCal. We surf, we skate, we get crazy, we party too much. And if we're lucky to make it out, which I was, then this thing happened. And I'm not sure if you want to ask me a few more questions before we get started, but right around 2019, something very big happened that kind of started this whole journey in a nutshell.
Well, I'd say we can get right into it. This sounds very interesting.
Cool. In a nutshell, yeah, like I said, that was way back in the day. And fast forward through life and girlfriends and everything else, I'm very open about saying this. I got really heavy into partying and taking everything that was in front of me and just being a big dummy and having fun. And that's all part of it. There was a little window. I stopped everything in 2012, and then I was still on medication for anxiety and stuff. That little monkey turned into a gorilla on my back in a nutshell. And I went to a rehab kind of place, got all cleaned up, and right around 2019, I was just really getting bored of going to meetings and hearing everybody's sob stories. I was just like, okay, cool, we need a hobby. I instantly just said, okay, I'm going to go get an RC truck. I went and got an RC truck. It was a scale RC thing at the time. People were hiking with them. It was a great community, very positive. When you could be wrenching on normally you'd be partying. Now I'm just wrenching on this little truck, and it was a great outlet. I just needed something to fill that void. It's a beautiful and a crazy thing over time what happened. So what that did for me was basically I set down a phone on a water bottle and I made a little video and I posted it, and then boom, it blew up. So that became this addiction, not just because it was a hobby, but it was really this void, and I had to keep doing it. It really was another monkey turning into a gorilla, but it was a healthy one. So what that did for me was pretty much just put me outside 365 days a year, literally rain or shine, any holiday, because I wanted the algorithm to love me early on, and I'm just trying to be that guy, just having a bunch of followers and having fun. And then I was going to start a little YouTube thing. Anyways, basically, it was just being outside. But where I was at in 2019 at the time, it was low desert. So you have to go on these little cruises to go find the real boulders to go rock crawling with these little things. And it was cool. And it still is. It's basically making little videos that look completely realistic. And you got these little trucks. And then when you're done getting all this footage, you hop in your vehicle and you go home. But it wasn't until little by little, as that page was building and I'm outside and I'm sunburned or it's pouring rain in the winter, and I would slowly start to get little feel. I never thought about Sasquatch or nothing, but I found myself often to find these rocks. I'd have to be miles and miles away from homes and stuff. So there was a particular moment that I had. I'm out there and basically just filming and frustrated. I'm trying to get the shot, trying to get as much footage as I can of this new particular item or these new axles that somebody was giving me for free, making like a little commercial for them. So it was almost like a job too. It was great. But little by little, I started feeling watched, and that started, why am I feeling paranoid out here? It's beautiful. And that started like that. Occasionally, I'd maybe get a little pebble that would just fall out of nowhere, and I'd be like, what was that? And I wasn't really open to that sort of thing at the time. So I'm just going, okay, maybe that was just a bird flew over with a big old pebble. I don't know. It wasn't until this particular time where I saw these rocks over this area of tall brush. By the way, excuse my terminology. My brother hunts a lot, but I'm not much into hunting, so I don't know terminology about certain types of brush and stuff. But basically, the brush was probably 7, 8 feet, maybe 9 feet tall in this big old area. But beyond that brush, I saw these big old white, beautiful rocks. I'm like, blue sky, white rocks, tires gripping. We'll make a nice little satisfying video, maybe get a bunch of views, just being my nerdy self, trying to stay out of trouble. And that's where it started. So I went into there, and right when I entered with my truck, and it's funny looking back, I can only imagine these Sasquatch, maybe a young one going, what is that? What is that guy doing out here with this little truck? And I don't know. I just always got this feeling, but it wasn't until this place that I walked in. And instead of just going around and walking through, right away, after about 7 feet in, I found myself in this kind of a tunnel. And instead of just going straight to the rocks, excited like an 8-year-old, I stopped and I'm looking around, and I felt like I was in an area where something passes through. And I'm really smart with mountain lion vibes and feet footprint and whatnot, or hoof prints and whatnot, but it was all pressed down. It was definitely something humans didn't do. And then my brain was trying to calculate it. I'm like, maybe the wind comes through here in a weird spiral and causes a big old tunnel. I don't know. But I remember right away just finding these things in these little areas where there might have been a little pile to the left of. One time there was in this little tunnel, and the tunnel I call it a tunnel, but it's really just brush that was probably something passing through there a lot. And we'll get to that. But at the time, I'm real confused, and I would see these random little piles, and I'm thinking hobos and stuff. But where I'm talking about, and we'll get into the map here in a second where these locations are, but where I was at, there's no homeless people. There's only maybe retired people at these scattered houses up in the hills near these mountains out behind the desert. And right away, I saw this little pile of, there was a Buddha, and there's some little old Hot Wheels and some random things, but there was a few different piles of this every 10 feet. And I was like, whatever. I didn't think Sasquatch at the time, but that was one of the first experiences where I'm definitely feeling odd and off. And I remember that whole time, I think I just filmed my truck for 10 minutes to get a clip to edit later, and I just went home. It was like a stomach kind of weird vibe. And looking back, I can easily see how they would pass through from one location to the other, maybe late at night. And I don't know. This is one of the reasons we're doing the show here. I have many things I can't explain. But it was definitely some sort of pathway where they go, and I'll explain that here in a minute of the map, what I'm talking about. And again, at the time, I didn't know that, but just bizarre, really bizarre feeling. Again, I'm still sober to this day, but even then I was just going, what is this feeling I got? This is strange. I'm not scared. I've come up here before, but I've never come across this particular area. And that was fascinating. The more I've learned up until this point is you learn. They migrate, they change around. Sure, they might go through different portals and stuff, but I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, they got blood, they got beating hearts, and they're just magnificent little ninjas out there. I don't even know. So Yeah, that was one of the first little moments of weirdness. I have everything written down here. I hope that's all making sense.
Oh, no, it absolutely does. And I think there's more going on in these Southern California areas that we know of. But just to make sure I get, I do some stuff on TikTok. And so you're one of the guys that you're making videos where it looks like a little Jeep and it's like a crawler and you're going up rocks and bridges and stuff. And
correct. And I've met other people who do this, and they have some cool stories too, and about this sort of thing. But I'm a lone wolf these days. But yeah, essentially it was that. Even as I was doing it and making those videos, I'm going, it really is a program that I have to keep running. There was like one day I was sick and I didn't film. Mm-hmm. I remember I just felt weird, so it became this thing. But yeah, and in a nutshell, the page got swiped off, and I'm starting a new one. But man, it was so fun for a while. And I just had all these little things in the back pocket, in my back of my brain, that I just wanted to share, because I was out there constantly. The rain shots were the best ones. Yeah.
Say that stuff is very cool. I do watch some of that on TikTok. It's very, at first you're like, this is weird. And then you're like, oh, this is actually really cool.
Oh, it's great. And I look at it like a little robot next to you, because if you're walking and you're hiking, this little tiny truck brings me this is a perfect example. It brings me to these areas I would never normally go. And sometimes there's a lot of beautiful stories too. And I'm looking around at this view, and I'm looking down at this truck. I'm like, without you, I wouldn't even be out here right now. So these little trucks I would build that became this little, I don't know, I'm pretty sure they would scare away more rattlesnakes up ahead if I'm driving the truck 10 feet in front of me, to a mountain lion's probably going to be freaked out by a little electronic things. It was also kind of a safety net. That's what allowed me to go anywhere. I was never scared of animals, because I knew that I had this loud little crawler truck or whatever with me at the time. And that usually gave me some confidence. But the more I'm learning, I'm like, I was probably attracting all the Sasquatch. They're watching this guy with his truck, and he's crouched down with a little square thing in his hand. What is he doing? But I don't know. It's wild. It's fun. But yeah, so this all started, in a nutshell, it's the lower desert. So we'll go Palm Desert, and from Palm Desert, you go south and you go up to 74. And I'm sure at some point you'll pull out a map and you know where I'm talking about, but I'll just give you a debrief on this location. So where this all started, 2019, was like 74. And then right behind the 74, you got to come up out of the low desert, and you boom, mountains and just thick forest. And it's cool, but it's just, there's no building. There's no houses out that way, a certain way for a while. Then you come down out west more, and boom, you slam into Idyllwild, which is known for the idle beast. I'll have a story about that here in a little bit. And then if you go, excuse my map language, by the way, I'm switched around here, but I'm pretty sure, from Idyllwild, then we go out to where you mentioned in the beginning, which is Big Bear, Lake Arrowhead, etc. And then in the middle of all that, you got Yucca Valley, Joshua Tree, and that's predominantly where we're at. And then out east, we have 29 Palms, and a man by the name of Tim Baker. I don't know if you're familiar with him, white beard, very knowledgeable about Sasquatch. He's on a few shows on YouTube. This particular man expanded for a little while on 29 Palms and how they have a bent rifle apparently in their lobby or something. I don't know, but I know that there's definitely some stories that span there too about the Sasquatch messing with the base out there, and UFOs and all that stuff's pretty normal out here. But I was fascinated to hear Tim Baker mention some things about 29 Palms way back in the day. And 29 Palms is way more desert deer and drier than where I'm at, and even where I was at before. And that alone was just like, God, it fascinated me. And from what I've heard and what I've learned, I'm pretty sure the angry ones are the rogue ones. They go far away from the forest, in my particular opinion, just to get away and eat deer and hide and stuff. So they're a lot more angry, in a sense, if I had to guess, predominantly the ones he's mentioned out in 29 Palms. And that leaves me right in the center in Yucca. And then strange things started to happen, because at the end of 219, 220, I moved up to near Joshua Tree, Yucca Valley. And then some more things started happening that I can't really explain. But yeah, if you get a chance, look into Tim Baker. There's many interviews of him on there. And this guy, he calls them boogers. He's one of those guys, old school, but it's cool. He talks about how he was working at the base out there, and they get real active when they try to shoot off a rocket or do some stuff. They noticed there was more activity when that would happen. And this sort of thing was fascinating me because I'm going, how does a Sasquatch, now that I'm learning, I'm going, how does a Sasquatch survive in the desert? Blah, blah, blah. I think it was your episode a while back that there was a lady briefly that I think it was on your show, and she was, of all places, talking about Vegas and how her and her husband were driving and they saw one down in this water gully on more than 100-degree day. They saw one in broad daylight. So this is what I mean. It's a cool topic. I'm always fascinated by it. But the one thing that kept grabbing me was like, I got to know more about this desert thing. What are they doing out in the desert? And then I started putting puzzles together. The tunnel, Idyllwild, triangle, right. I'm like, okay, so they probably pass through certain times of the year if deer run out here, or if they're squat in the forest out by Big Bear, they get into some beef and they have to, the big rogue ones that have 2 toes, I don't know. I just have a feeling they come out this way. It's very complex, but yeah.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I did have an individual come on the show. It was a short one because it was a TikTok thing about how they saw pretty much what people call Yucca Man. This was down in Desert Hot Springs, so near Joshua Tree, but a little bit to the west.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I have my notes here on this little quote unquote map triangle thing I keep mentioning. I left out DHS. Now DHS, you got Palm Desert where this all started, where I mentioned in the low desert. Yucca Valley is high desert, half hour drive-ish. Okay, and then you got Idyllwild. DHS is pretty much in the center of all this. And the thing that fascinated me more when that desert Sasquatch thing came to my brain, especially hearing Tim Baker talk, I was like, okay, let's think. Sure enough, right on the map in DHS, there's a story. And where this guy's talking about is literally sand dunes where I used to film my RC cars with paddle tires. So that was great with my GoPros and the slow motion stuff. It wasn't always crawling. I'd go out there and take a trophy truck and throw some paddles on it, get some slow-mo shots. But I was fascinated to hear that in 1970, maybe 73, I could be off there. You'll see it on the Bigfoot map in DHS. There's a man in his Volkswagen that basically his Volkswagen low beams were only at a certain point, but he saw this huge thing that I'm pretty sure he said it looked like a piece of plywood or a refrigerator, I forget, but this huge hairy thing that he noticed that he saw down there. And you can read up on that. You'll see it in Desert Hot Springs, California, on the map there. But and as I'm learning more and from a helicopter view, if you will, DHS is right in the middle. One could have been passing from Idyllwild in the middle of the night, going up to the high desert for some deer, could have been walking through to Lake Arrowhead. By the way, this whole desert topic, I know half the comments are going to be like, yeah, take another hit, pal. Trust me, I was the same way, but man, I saw how serious Tim Baker was on these things, and I'm starting to collect more little interesting things that were happening, and I'm like, I think it's quite the opposite. And then, yeah, the Yucca Man, that's the government or whatever is real quick to block that out and just make a silly little thing with a man in a suit and blah, blah, blah. But that's got to stem from some real stuff. And it's eerie even because the hair that they're describing is that sand color. And I can see how quickly it would just blend. It would blend in really well. So yeah, you got the Yucca Man one, you got the one in DHS, and I think there's a few. There's definitely a bunch of dots around Idyllwild, a bunch of dots out more by Big Bear and all that. And yeah, we're right in the middle of it all. It's pretty wild. It's cool. I don't let it surround my brain 24/7, but when I do it now, I'm definitely a little more respectful. I walk up right when I get out of my truck, and there might not even be any tall trees around. I still say, hey guys, just here to observe and enjoy the land, get some fresh air. I don't mean anybody any harm. I still do that because I've heard so many little hippie ladies on the Bigfoot show say that's good to do that. So I just take little notes. I don't want to disrespect these things. You have a story on your show where this guy, broad daylight, he was hiking, and that one with 2 toes, there was a female he was staring at, and this one with 2 toes walks up to him and it's screaming at him, and he's curled up in a ball, like broad daylight on a trail. Things happen, but I just have a feeling, though, if there's any up here, they're probably the rogue ones, until I get to a story that happened not long after I moved up here that reminded me I don't think it's all rogue ones.
So you mentioned that you've experienced some weird things in Yucca Valley.
Yeah, I moved up here. We moved up here at the end, maybe 220-ish. And new home, this is still not watching a whole lot of the Bigfoot stuff yet. Just getting settled in, still making the movies and stuff. There are weird things that I couldn't explain. I'm about to mention. It usually happened in winter, springish. It's just a thing. And that makes perfect sense because it was wintertime and springtime that I was hiking maybe, I don't know, 2 miles behind my house here. Again, from a helicopter view right behind Yucca Valley to maybe the north and all around, you'll see on a map that it's pretty much just miles and miles of mountains and just all kinds of nothing, right? It was like this thing that I started noticing more in winter and spring. There was more weirdness, and I was up there and I saw these two. I'm not good with names of these animals. Sometimes you can laugh. That's all right. I'm an old burnout musician, filmer guy, but it's funny because there's these two deers that ran by me, broad daylight. And I'm a big guy, and the deer's back ends were probably up to my shoulder. And they ran right by me. They split right around me. Sure, a mountain lion, something chasing them, maybe our hairy friend, who knows? But it was crazy how they ran by me. But I instantly realized where I moved. I'm like, it's a little more wild up here in the high desert. Okay. And I just put that in the back of my brain in a nutshell. But I noticed I would see more animals that time of year, and then I'm putting things together. I'm like, it seems like maybe all the campers come out to Big Bear and snowboarders, snow bunnies. Maybe they come out this way in the winter to get away from the humans. I don't know. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've mentioned Idyllwild a few times, which I have heard of that, but I'm not extremely familiar with that. I haven't talked to anyone about that area either yet. What are things that you've heard from that area?
I'll tell you what, this was my first time doing one of these things, so I kind of tree branched off on a different thing there. So Yucca, yes, I moved up here, and we'll get right into Idyllwild because the story, little line that I have here, there was a couple interesting things that happened out there. And that was right around when I got more into watching these shows and stuff.
Okay.
But Yucca, high desert, here we go. I don't know if this was a month or two into maybe even a little longer into this house. One night, and then by the way, this time of year, there was Airbnbs just starting at the time. There's no partiers. There's no people up late at night up here. It's all retired people at this part of the town, and it's very quiet and mellow. This is just one thing I had to write down. I'm told it's good to do those things you can't explain, and we're sleeping, and one night my house is set up from a helicopter view again. It's set up to where a coyote, for instance, could run into the side of my house, going through the big backyard, which is maybe quarter acre-ish, and he could come around and go back out the front. I'm just giving you a little visual of what that is or how my place is set up. One night, there was a little random thing where it was dead winter, cold. You can hear the occasional owl hoots out there. Love it. And I was just going to sleep, and something ran by the window enough to not just shake the bed frame and shake the window and shake the wall a little bit, but it was so bizarre because it wasn't like a clunk, like a horse, or which would just really be a deer or maybe a pack of coyotes or something. This was basically the sound of something that might have been maybe, and I know, I have to share this. This had to have been something that was maybe 3-4 feet tall, but had to have been maybe 300 pounds, 200 pounds. But the strange thing about this was, and I had to remember this is where it all started, was the footsteps were very fast, but they were so close together and they were bipedal. So it was like, and there's videos that have leaked recently, whether they're real or not, I don't know. But we've heard a lot of stories when they run like spiders or they get down on their fingers or so. In my brain, I'm going, okay, maybe because we're surrounded by mountains. I'm looking at a mountain right here outside of our house, and maybe the parents are up at the top and send a couple of the little young ones down there to chase some rabbits and get some meat, maybe run through the houses. I don't know, but it's enough to write down because there was no people that time of year. It was middle of the night, and whatever was heavy enough to shake the side of the house and kept me up for a while. I was like, what the heck was that? So that was just something where it started a little weirdness, and I'm slowly more and more realizing I'm in a lot more wild of an area, if that makes sense. And then right around then there was those cold, windy nights, dead December, January. It's known to snow up here too. And by the way, too, I was always told where there's deer and stuff, there could be Sasquatch. So then my light bulb was slowly going on at this time. Wasn't watching the shows quite yet as much, but there was a cold, windy nights, and there's no skunks up here. You can research that. But a couple different times I'd go outside for a smoke in the front, and there would just be this putrid smell. It wasn't trash day or nothing. It was just this strange things. So in my personal hypothesis, I feel like certain times of the year they come out here, get away from all the snow bunnies and whatever else. Maybe they come out here to maybe train their young to do something different. I don't know, but it's definitely something where I think they definitely lurk through in those cold nights. And that would be such a cool painting of this big old rogue one that's just standing there overlooking at all these houses and stuff. Because right where our line is, where our houses are at, the mountains start. It just goes for miles and miles. And it's still high desert, but it's technically still mountainy, if that makes sense. So that's when these little strange things were starting to happen a little bit, enough for me to remember. And so, yeah, there's always a creepy feeling too back there. And I used to scrap and be crazy. It was nothing like I was scared of anything else except for just this feeling. Your stomach would bubble in some of these areas, kind of like a vibe just to get out. And okay, so right around then I went for a cruise. I started watching some of the shows and I did a little research, and apparently Idyllwild, yeah, there's a little talk about it there. There's even a little shop that's all kind of Sasquatch stuff. And you Google it, they're very quick to just put a guy in a costume and make you just turn away. But it turns out that I was at a gas station, for instance, and I was just getting the light bulb on about this topic. And it was a drive I wanted to do. Let's go check it out type thing. And I pulled into this gas station, nice lady, an old hippie lady. And I said, you ever hear any sound, any weird cries at night that you can't really explain? And she was right away. She lit up like a light and she just went on about all kinds of weird sounds and things they hear up there. And she was really adamant about these green lights that they see at the top and energy and that sort of thing. And this mountain there, which is trippy because right after that mountain, it's boom. On the other side, it's Palm Springs, low desert, hot, very hot. But yeah, you go high up enough, there's snow up there all. So Idyllwild's very eerie. There's very cool and beautiful, by the way, too. But anytime I was there, I'd step maybe, 100 yards in, and I just, I don't know, dude. I want to go. So I just light a cigarette, walk back to my truck, and just go. It's just a feeling. But there was a time in Idyllwild, I'm glad you brought that up. I grabbed a little rock that looked like a crystal. I'm like, that'll be cool in the bathroom. Cool, great. This was a nice day. Let's go grab a rock to remember this day. I went to clear my head. I was going through a bunch of stuff. One of those things, just go for a drive. Let's check it out. Maybe have an adventure and come home. And throughout this time, I'm watching some shows, but there was this feeling, man. It was like you took something that's not yours. You need to return that. And I know that's silly. I have rocks that I collect from hikes and stuff, but this particular rock was like a vibe. I don't know. It was in my head. It wasn't quite voice speak kind of vibe, but it was more like almost like a grandpa kind of giving you that vibe. Shame on you. You shouldn't have took that without asking grandma. It was one of those things. So I remember the next day I grabbed that rock and I drove all the way back out there, literally. And I didn't even bring an RC that day. I just went out there and I parked and I set the rock down right where I got it. And I put my hand up and I said, no hard feelings. And it might have been the craziest, weirdest thing in the world. But I tell you what, my shoulders felt way lighter after doing it. But it didn't end there because right before you exit that area, it's gorgeous. You're going right from people to boom, it's just forest and gorgeous. And it was just mesmerizing. So I remember stopping at this little tourist thing, and where this little tourist thing is a little concrete pad, and people can look at a little map and take a picture, and behind them is just this huge field of pine trees, and it's gorgeous, something out of a Bob Ross painting. And so that was the last little area to check it out before we went back on the freeway and headed back home. And I remember standing there, broad daylight, a lady and her daughter just was leaving the place. They got in their car and left, and boom, you could hear a mouse fart from 2 miles away. It was so quiet. And I'm standing there for a second. I'm looking around, and it's just beautiful. I'm getting ready to walk back to the car, and I hear a crunch. And it wasn't a boulder falling on something. It was the calmest day ever. Didn't even hear any birds at that moment. But in my brain, and this took a while after, I was like, maybe he was just standing, one of them was standing right there, which would have been right off of the concrete ledge where this thing is at. It drops down about 12 feet, but if one was so inclined, he could have been easily sending one of the other ones to, I don't know. I can't explain it, but I can tell you that there was a loud kind of crunch and then almost like a half crunch, like something was standing right there. If that's their home, they know everybody coming in and out, and they're probably going to leave a couple watchers right there on the entrance, or the exit, I should say. And yeah, I remember that. And it was almost like a nod. I remember driving home, and I almost had that feeling like it was saying thank you. Maybe it's just to them. They're probably ancient, obviously, and taking something as simple as that could have really rattled their feathers a little bit. I don't know. I just did it, and I feel better about doing it. So that's my little Idyllwild story as far as that little part's concerned.
I think that was good that you did take it back, even for your own, I guess, sanity, really. I hear stuff like that all the time. People take something from Hawaii and it's never good. You gotta, you don't take
perfect
stuff
example.
from different places for sure. It's very interesting. But I'm looking at pictures of Idyllwild, and it's definitely got an interesting, almost Shasta vibe to it. It feels like it's just one of those towns that are really cool.
Very much. And it's so popular. There's going to be people that hike there every day hearing this that are like, oh, we hike there every day. It's fine. I'm just telling you how I felt there. It was just a feeling, man. It was almost like I was one of those kids back in the day that we lived in a haunted house, and I was open to those sort of things. There was a lady that would watch me sleep in her gown, and that was creepy. And I don't know, maybe they just nudged certain people a certain way, or maybe I sensed that they were there without knowing it. But I remember I didn't walk far into there. Big, beautiful trees too. And I was looking up at tree breaks. Sure, there's a bunch of them, but you don't know if it's from the wind or what. So I couldn't really put that into anything. But I'm going, God, this is the perfect place. They could easily, just become, So Idyllwild's got its own little world really over there. It is. It's like you almost feel like you're in NorCal or Washington over there.
You've also mentioned we had brought up Crestline and Lake Arrowhead, which I myself, I've gotten probably at least 2 or 3 accounts from that area. So that seems to be a pretty active area, I would say.
That's fascinating. I'm glad you brought that up, because now that we've talked about that, looking forward, looking behind my house here from the back on, I can literally see Big Bear here from my window. And it's almost, I doubt it's Big Bear. Sure, it's huge, but I'm sure these things are breeding as we're learning. And God, they got to migrate on occasion to go find big deer. Like I just mentioned, there's a couple big old deer up here that I seen one time out there hiking. So I just feel like, they come from there, but who knows? From the more I'm sure you're learning too, they're known to travel. Obviously, they're known to be bigger and healthier the farther up north you go compared to Florida or something. But we've heard big ones down there too. It's strange. I'm pretty sure they just migrate at night. They go through these big areas that they know nobody else knows. This tunnel thing that I found one time, I still can't even explain that at all. There was no sign of hedge clippers, no nothing. It was like something big was just walking through there often, pushing down everything, like a little secret little passway. So I'm pretty sure they go from Big Bear, they walk all the way through Yucca, maybe out to 29 Palms. They go back down through DHS. They could go straight through DHS to Idyllwild and go right back out off the 74 I mentioned too. Gosh, from a helicopter view, sure, it's the desert and it's hot. You got the high desert where it starts to cool off, and then just right out an hour or so out west-ish, you got Big Bear and all that, and Crestline, and that girl who sued the county or whatever, and she won. And they know there's stuff out there. And I'm actually just starting to look up more. If I go somewhere like that, I'm learning they're up there sometimes.
Yeah,
it's just fascinating.
I believe you're referring to Claudia Ackley, right? She's from that area.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think so.
Yep.
It was a little clipping that they have about that. I wish I had more information as far as the 29 Palms things and all that, but maybe this will wake up a couple others to come out with their stories out here. I never hear people talk about it yet. It's so they're so here, obviously. You can look at the lakeboard on the Bigfoot map. They're all over the place. And I'm just like, that's strange. Why does the desert keep getting shut out of these conversations? To me, that's the most fascinating one. So I don't know. My hypothesis, they travel through to get away, or I don't know. I don't think just a random father of a family is going to randomly just walk out here and start messing with a Navy base or a military base out there, unless it was rogue and it was just, I don't know. It's just fascinating stuff. It's wild. There was a morning out here. This is one of the semi-recent ones. There was a morning out here where, lots of coyotes and everything out here. And there was a morning out here with my coffee, and I'm just setting my coffee down. I already heard the coyotes chirping while I was pouring my coffee. You know how they cry in a big pack over here on the mountain, which is probably a mile or 2 tops where they could have been. And I was like, all right, look at those little guys are up and doing their thing. Boom. There was this huge roar over the coyotes, enough to make me shake the coffee and go, whoa. And I felt it in my chest. And I was like, okay, cool. It took me a second to program or to feel, what was that? I'm still waking up and I'm going, what? And I knew right away it wasn't a dog, because that dog would have continued barking. It was one loud roar, like a shut up type thing. And it was enough to reach me all the way over on my porch here and shake my chest a little bit. And I went right through the whole dictionary of animals in my brain. And I'm like, that was none of those. I almost thought maybe a mountain lion, but even if, let's say, something barked at those coyotes, whatever it was has to dominate a huge pack of coyotes, because right after that sound, it was dead quiet. What else could put a whole pack of coyotes in check with one loud roar that reaches all the way to this guy's porch while he's having his coffee? I don't know. If you let me know in the comments. A lot of people will say this, that, and the other, but wouldn't the coyotes continue to bark a few times after that? Maybe a couple puppies still chirping after a loud shut up from another animal, but it was almost like something was like, just stop. The sun's coming up. You guys need to stop right now. No, it was still dark out. Barely the sun was coming up too. I left that out. That was eerie. That was something I had to write down because that shook me to the point where, I felt it in my chest, just like your fans tell their stories on here. And that was strange because that was just vibration. It wasn't just the noise. It was almost like it sent out this huge shock wave, like a video game, like 2 miles out from it, and everything in that path gets felt like, I don't know. It was cool. It was dead silent for the rest of the morning after that with my whole coffee. I didn't hear one chirp. So if you know what can shut up a whole pack of coyotes, let us know in the comments. I'm curious. I got to know that one. That's been bugging me for a while.
Yeah, you hear that kind of thing, and that always makes you wonder. It doesn't make sense that it could be anything else. You hear something that loud. I've heard something similar up in Oregon, and it really does. It messes with you. It makes you stop. It's crazy to hear something that loud do a roar or a scream or whatever it is that you hear, the equivalent, but.
Yeah, it wasn't Ohio howl type stuff. This was like a loud, again, excuse my language, I don't know the thing on here, but it really was like a loud, just shut up, and he stopped. But it was enough to it was a loud, it was definitely like a male-ish scream. It wasn't like 3 voices, the high, the low. It was 1, maybe 2, double, just octave, just enough to almost just push me back a little bit. And yeah, that was bizarre. And again, it was cooler out. It was one of those things where, sure, sun's coming up. They know about that little row of houses right there. Things are acting up around that time. Maybe they are kind of protectors. And I've heard a lot of people say that maybe they run their own program up there. And if things are getting too rowdy, they feel good just putting everything in check. Keep it down for the humans. I don't know. But that's definitely one thing I still cannot explain at all. It's just bizarre. And there's no doubt in my mind they pass through here and stuff. But again, I wanted to open up that door to see who else comes forward with some cool desert stories. Again, nobody ever expands on it. I want to hear more about the 29 Palm stories out there. There's a ton of them, and they go way back in the day. But
oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think you may have mentioned before, did you say that you have other people that you know in the same community of RC crawlers that they've had things happen as well that are out of the ordinary?
Most of them chuckle and laugh when the subject has changed really quick. But when you get any of those individuals by themselves, people just open up and tell you things. And I don't know. Yeah, I've heard a few different people say that there's things they can't explain around a certain bend, big old bipedal splashes walking through, and they're there with their RC trucks crawling on some rocks, and something else is basically saying, hello, kids, get out of here with your toys. This is my area. Just because we know how quiet they can be, and they know that's their living room. This is their living room, I should say. So they know how to spark a little fear to get somebody out of there, or they can be very quiet. They've been known to walk through all kinds of areas, and you can't hear a darn thing on fall day with dry leaves everywhere. They're just so ninja. It's fascinating. I don't know. But yeah, there's been a lot of those sort of stories where somebody hears something splashing. I've heard the Pebble ones a few times where there's no cliff above. And my buddy Alex, he had a couple pebbles hit it near his ankle one time. He mentioned briefly, but it put my light bulb on. I'm like, all right, okay. I've had that happen. You know what I mean? But guys being guys, I don't know, when we're all together, you don't really expand on it too much. But I think a lot of these Bigfoot things are stuff we do when we're by ourselves watching our shows at night. I don't know.
Absolutely. John, this has been a really interesting conversation. I think it will hopefully open up a lot of people that may not have reached out before. So I want to say thank you for reaching out and for having this conversation. I want to make sure that we were able to chat about everything that you'd wanted to bring to the show today.
Yeah, I appreciate you just giving me a chance to share a couple of these things. When I'm watching an episode and there's not a whole bunch of action, I'll still watch or listen, but I wish I had more. I hope this kind of puts on that light bulb, little motivation for people to come forward with some of those Class A sightings and stuff. I just had to put the light bulb on that there's definitely a little triangle out here of activity that goes way back. And I encourage anybody to look into that when you're bored. It's fun and cool. Since then, my last page got deleted, but I'm starting a new one up, and I'm still out there. it really is 365 days a year type of thing. It keeps me out of trouble. So I'll definitely be collecting things over time. If anything happens, and I'll definitely be sharing them.
And what's the name of your current channel if people want to check out what RC crawlers are and they haven't seen it before?
This will be cool because we all have a nerdy side.
Yep.
So yeah, come by and check it out. It's Rabbit Lodge Racing. You can just go at Rabbit Lodge Racing. I got to change that to media. I might just leave it to racing, but at Rabbit Lodge Racing YouTube channel. I'm going to be starting my videos here towards the beginning of winter. We'll get that page up and going again. And it's just all entertainment. You can sit back and watch it while you eat. If there's something really cool that happens, I might mention it on there, but this is more just for fun visuals to check out, maybe inspire you for a build or something. So yeah, come on by, give me a follow, and get ready for some cool videos.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, John. I appreciate it.
Yep, love your show, man, and thank you so much for having me, and you have yourself a good rest of the day.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Good. What brings you up tonight?
I think I contacted you a while back about my experience, and I keep having them, and it's just pretty cool, and I thought I'd tell my story tonight if you don't mind.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, so I live in Nebraska, and they're usually not said to be around this area. And I think it's because it's wide open spaces, not a lot of tree, not a lot of coverage, and things like that. But when I moved to the area that I live in now, my sister-in-law, which she wasn't my sister-in-law at the time, said she saw one. And I had that always in the back of my head. You just go on with your life, and we're like, okay. I was driving one night. I used to work for the railroad as a driver to drive engineers to their trains. And I was coming back home, and I was going down into this little valley where a huge river goes through it. And as I'm nearing, I'm on the phone with my mom. So my mom and my daughter, they're still up at this late hour, can hear me. And all of a sudden, I see something. And I'm like, what is that? So it's on the side of the road, and it takes one step, and then all of a sudden it's in the middle of the road. And this is a 2-lane highway. And then it looks at me, and it wasn't fear as much as just awe of how fast and how big it was. And then it took one more step, and it was already gone. And I said to my mom, I'm like, I think I just saw a Bigfoot. And she's, no, you didn't. I'm like, I seriously think I saw a Bigfoot. And you know how everybody's, no, you didn't see one or whatever. I followed the river. There's several big rivers around me. So I would occasionally go down to a river. I drive when I get stressed. And there's this little bridge that is out in the middle of nowhere that nobody goes except for a farmer that has a crop back there. But he doesn't even irrigate it. He just plants it and forgets it. And I go and sit on that bridge, and I've been communicating or seeing this same one, I believe it's the same one, about every 2 to 3 months. I've left it gifts before, and I've had a skull given back to me and things like that. I know it prefers like plush animals, like stuffed animals, like really bright, vivid ones, which I would think is weird because where would they hide it? But I have had that experience about every 2 months since 5 years ago. I never feel threatened, but I also don't try to look it in the eye, and I don't try to initiate contact. But I do know that she, I don't even know what it is, travels the same river system, and I can find them at different parts of the river at different times. I can actually map out where it's going to be, because it has like a game trail and it follows the rivers, which is really cool.
Oh my goodness. So you're actually having visual sightings over the last 5 years. You're just not taking direct.
I do have some footprint,
Okay.
and hair. I have all of that because one time when it jumped a barbed wire fence, I think I got caught or I got nicked. But I've got so much evidence that there's no way you can tell me that it wasn't what I saw.
What is the hair like that you have?
It's very coarse, very stinky. When I first got it, thank God I put it in a baggie, so the baggie still smells like it. It's very coarse and long. It feels hollow, like lighter, but thicker. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it has like varying colors of brown on it. It's really weird. Like I don't know how to describe it. When you move the follicle, like there's different colors throughout the hair shaft. It's really weird.
Is that looking at it through a microscope or just looking at it with your naked eye?
Microscope. I got very
Okay.
into looking at it because I couldn't believe I found it.
That's awesome. There is a DNA study being done out of North Carolina State where they're taking in any evidence that people want to send in that is related to Bigfoot.
I would love to. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to send it in because I also know one time when I parked my car and went for a walk because there's this abandoned barn. And I was just looking at it because it's really cool and I like to find like old horseshoes and stuff. When I came back, there was a handprint on my window. And there was no way no human made that handprint on my window. I don't know where it was because I never saw it that day. But there was definitely a handprint on my window. Like he was looking in it or something. It was really weird. I don't know if it's he or she though, so.
There's a name if you can write this down, the name of the individual you need to look up is Darby Orcutt.
Okay.
And it's DARBY ORCUTT.
Okay.
And he has a website where you can request to send in a sample for them to test the DNA on.
Okay. I just have the picture of the handprint. I couldn't, so I had to get a picture of the feet prints. But you will find them regularly down at the river system where I go and meet up every once in a while with it. It's never acted angry or violent towards me. But I do know that if I get out of my car, I don't feel safe. Does that make sense? Okay, it's like I'm in its area. If I'm in my car, I act really respectful and I try not to make eye contact with it or whatever. But I'm not going to purposely anger it to find out if it would be sweet or not. Because I always want to treat it like I would say a bigger male or a great ape where you don't want to look at them directly in the eye to challenge them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I also know that it's never been threatening. There's only one time it was, and that was when he heard it first. I don't know how far away it was, but he showed I'm saying he or she, I don't know. It showed its teeth. And then about 2 minutes later, a car went by.
Okay.
On an opposite road. I don't know how he heard it, but he heard it way better than I ever did.
What did the teeth look like?
Yellow. There was some canines. They're very blocky, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does, yeah.
You go to the Natural History Museum and like those teeth that the Iceman had and stuff like that. I would describe it that, but definitely sharper and definitely bigger.
A lot of people think that there's not much activity that happens in Nebraska, and we don't know where this is in the state, but there is activity.
Yeah, I try not to tell anybody about it just because I don't want anybody else finding it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've gotten so many reports from even in the Omaha area. It's crazy what's going on in that state in certain areas.
There's definitely enough space out here that nobody goes to that would definitely allow it to be free and wild. And there's enough hunting, fishing, anything where it could sustain quite a few animals that you would never know about it. Because if you just follow the river system that I live near, it branches off into 30 different creeks and stuff, and you'll get lost so fast.
That's incredible. Melissa, I appreciate you coming up and sharing what you've been experiencing over the years. Feel free to reach out in the future if stuff continues to happen, and if you want to report that as well. My email is bigfootsociety@gmail.com.
I definitely will. Do you have any suggestions on, because I noticed it appreciated the stuffies and left me like bigger things. Do I keep interacting with it, or do I stop just because I don't want to? I don't know exactly how to progress, because I was told to leave things and then somebody just told me not to.
So I will say this, and this is based on reports I've taken over the years. If you stop interacting in this way, there could be issues.
Oh, okay.
So that is something to keep in mind.
And I don't mind giving them things. I have toys from my children that they've obviously outgrown and things, so I have buckets full of stuff.
And I would say usually that's more if you're leaving food. Like a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't leave food just because I understand what feeding wildlife can entail, because I'm a wildlife rehabilitator.
Oh, okay.
So I try to mainly just leave like trinkets and things that would make it curious and want to learn, but not think of me as food.
Yeah, so I think if food's not really involved, then it shouldn't be. I don't think it would be as bad. Usually the reports I take where there's issues are the person has been giving them food and then they stop all of a sudden. That could be a big deal.
As a wildlife rehabilitator, you can't feed anything out there, and you take that kind of oath. So that's why I always chose non-food items.
Melissa, is this a conversation that I could put on the Bigfoot podcast that I have? Or?
Of course.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming up. Hopefully we'll hear from you in the future as well.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll try to get some more concrete evidence. I did go get plaster repairs and things for the feet prints, so we'll see if I get more evidence.
Sounds great. Have a good one.
All right, thank you.
Hi there. How are you?
Hello. I'm good.
Hi.
Thank you.
Good. Were you wanting to come up to share, or do you mind sharing about encounters that you've had?
No, I don't mind sharing. I don't have a real big long story or anything about it, but yeah, I was around 11 years old. We lived in Brookdale, California, across the Highway 9 from the Brookdale Lodge, for anybody that's familiar with the area. And the Brookdale Creek ran behind our house, and I would play at that creek a whole lot. And the creek ended up feeding into the San Lorenzo River. And I would follow the creek down to the river, and I would play in the river, like right there where the creek came into the river. And that feeling of somebody watching you. And that would happen a lot in that area. And on this particular day, when I looked up and started looking around for, is there somebody around? I saw a face across the San Lorenzo River sticking out of the forest. It was the eyes and the bridge of the nose that I first saw. And it was very tall and all of that. And it just shifted away. And I didn't really hear a whole lot of movement because of the river sounds and all of that. But that was pretty much about as far as that went that day. But I knew I had saw something. I knew it wasn't a bear. I wasn't sure if I was seeing like maybe somebody that lived in the woods because that was something that happened there. But it really did stick with me. And I was like, is that what I saw? Or was it one of the hermit people? And I eventually went back, probably about sometime within the week after that, and went across the river and went up where I thought it may have gone. And I did come across, it was very smelly, and came across like where all of the trees were like pushed down, or to somebody else it may have just looked like they all fell like that, a different crisscross kind of pattern. But I did walk down into there, and it was very stinky, and there was like branches and stuff like that, and I just got that overwhelming scary feeling and took off and never really went back. But there was definitely a worn pattern, like a worn trails, and where I found the little like lean-to-y kind of thing, call it that for lack of better description right now. It was like where a bunch of redwood trees had fallen at one time, and then there was all the limbs were going across it. Yeah. So I'm not really sure, but I do believe that was my first time of seeing a Bigfoot. And then many years later, when I was 19, I was living up on Mount Shasta with a bunch of people. And we had many and many different times. The thumping, the whooping, the rocks being thrown towards our camp. And one of the times that we were coming back from town down in Shasta and going back up like towards where the lodge used to be. And there's no way again that this was a bear. People try to always tell me it was a bear, and there's no way it was a bear. The arms were swinging, the legs were going, the ground wasn't, we did stop to look for it. Ran across the road in front of the Volkswagen, and we stopped to see if we could find tracks. But the way that the dirt was, you couldn't really see anything. So that was first was when I was 11, and the other one was 19, when I did see with my eyes and smelt with my nose. And then there was another time when I was younger. I didn't see anything, but the fear in my brother and stepbrother's voices and faces, and the rush to get back across the frozen lake, I do believe that's what they saw. We were in Big Bear, and we were staying at a family friend's cabin that was on the lake, and it was winter. The lake was frozen, and we had gone across, and it was like frozen. People are out there on it all the time. And there was like this clearing on the mountain across the lake there, and we took our snow sleds, and we were snow sledding, and we'd been sledding for a while. And my brothers had just pushed me down to go down the hill, and I'm going for a great ride, and I get to the bottom of the hill, and I pick up my sled and turn around to go back up the hill, and I see my brothers running back. They're running down the hill, and they're yelling, "Run!" and waving their hands. And I was just stunned for a moment, and I did turn and start running, and they ended up catching up to me, and my brother like picked me up and threw me on to the sled, and they grabbed a hold of the rope, and they were just running. I didn't know what. I just started crying. I was really little, and I started crying. They ran across the lake with me. And I'm like, what? Why? What's going on? And all of that. We get back to the parents, and I'm listening to them telling that after they'd slid me down the hill, that the Bigfoot ran across from the one forest to the next forest area from where we were snow sledding, right behind me. They never said that it was like trying to get me or anything like that, but yeah. So that was like that would have been actually the first time, but I didn't see what they saw.
Oh my goodness. When you were in Shasta, were you guys camped up on the mountain itself?
Yes, we were like in the area of Cougar Meadows up there.
Oh, is that like Panther Meadows?
Panther Meadows, yes. Yeah, that's
Okay.
that area there. Yeah.
I've
So
heard,
below where the old ski lodge was.
yep, yeah, I've heard there's a lot of weird stuff that happens in that area.
Yeah. And there's a very small, like, spring kind of creek that goes through that meadows. And we used to find all kinds of little bones and all kinds of stuff in there. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I definitely have lots of different stories of all kinds of just, I guess, supernatural, paranormal, whatever category you want to put it into when I was living up on Mount Shasta.
Oh, so were you also seeing like lights in the woods or things like that too?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. That pretty much a little bit of everything. I'm about ready to turn 59, and that was when I was 19 that I was living up there. It's amazing that where we are now with all the different shows and different stuff, those that have come out, it is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's put me at ease that the things that I've experienced, that it wasn't just something that I was thinking that was happening at the time or stuff like that. We climbed up to the caves at Shasta, like the big owl eye caves that anybody that pretty much is going to be following Bigfoot, I'm sure you guys have all heard stories of the caves on Shasta, and yeah, it's a pretty...
You know what? I don't know if I ever have. Is there a story about those caves?
From different stories I've heard that people believe that UFOs come and go from those caves.
Right, yep.
Yeah, just lots of other stuff like that.
Now, when you were in that area, did a lot of people have stories of actually seeing Bigfoot up in that area?
No, not at the time. A lot of this stuff that I experienced on my own or with the group, we talked about it amongst ourselves, of course, but it wasn't a lot of the things that I experienced in my younger years. I never really spoke with about too many other people until probably just this past, 15 years or so, 20 years?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you're able to finally come forward.
Where it's become more open. I had no idea when I lived in San Lorenzo Valley above Santa Cruz, California. I guess per seeing it on a show, on one of the Bigfoot shows, there's that museum in Ben Lomond now. Have you heard of that?
Where is this?
The Bigfoot Museum, Ben Lomond, California.
No, I haven't.
From what I heard on the Bigfoot show, that I believe it's Ben Lomond. It's either Felton or Ben Lomond. It's along Highway 9 in the San Lorenzo Valley. And I guess they say that it's one of the most active Sasquatch Bigfoot areas.
I know exactly what you're talking about now. That was the Bigfoot Discovery Museum in Felton. Unfortunately, I believe has closed just because of lack of funding, and the owner, Mike Rugg, was unable to. He pretty much retired from it.
Keep it going.
Yeah, but another one I could recommend is Cliff Barackman's museum up in Boring, Oregon. The North American Bigfoot Center is incredible. If you're ever up there, check it out.
I just had no idea until many years after moving away that was known as very active Bigfoot area.
Absolutely. This conversation has been really interesting. I could use it in my Bigfoot podcast that I have.
Of course. That's really cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Very good. Hey, feel free to reach out if you have any other things that you experience in the future. But this has been really fun talking to you today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me up. Thank you for asking me to come up. Thank you, Bobby.
Good stuff. Whew. I'll tell you what, this is quite a night. We're going for a few hours. Hold on here. I think it is time to call it a night. I know that there might be a few people that are still waiting to come up. Feel free, if you would like to share any other experiences you have or sightings, I would love to hear about them. You can send me an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com, or you can wait until I do another live. Make sure you are following this account and hit the all notifications on so you don't miss out on any other future lives. And I hope to talk to you then. And thanks to everyone who shared tonight. And appreciate you all being here. Have a good one all. We'll talk to you later.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. I saw your comment. Looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, I bought a new boat, and me, my wife, and my daughter was heading up to Patoka Lake up in Indiana. We was going up there to camp with a bunch of friends for the 4th of July, and it was on July 3rd, 1996. And I was just getting ready to make a turn toward the lake. And my daughter, which she was probably, I'd say about 14, 12 or 13, 14, something like that at the time. And I heard her say, "Look, Daddy, somebody's pet gorilla got out." And of course I thought, what the heck? And I turned around and my wife said, "What is that?" And I looked, and I guess it was probably, I would say maybe 100 to 120 yards away. And it was kind of walking along the bank just through the weeds. And it was walking away from us. I never did see the face. I've seen the whole backside and kind of part of the right side of it. And it was an orangish brown, and on the top of its head, I guess you would call like the mane, it had I guess what should have been like a white streak come down like what you would see off a skunk. But it was a real dingy, musky looking yellow. You could tell it was dirty, just filthy dirty. And it walked. And of course, back then, there was no cell phones for us anyway, no cell phones. My camera was under the seat of my boat, and the whole top of the boat was loaded with chairs and tents, and it was all buckled down, so I couldn't get to my camera. And by the time I got out of my truck, I had a whole line of cars beeping because I was blocking traffic. So we get to the campsite where all my neighbors and friends were at, and I told them about it. Of course, they started making fun of me. And I told the men, I said, "Come on, let's go. I know where this thing is at." I said, "We can get there by boat." And of course, all the people that was making fun of me all of a sudden started going, "I'm not going up there. Heck no, I'm not going up there." And I said, "Come on, you all sit here making fun of me. Let's go. Let's see if we can find tracks." And I couldn't get anybody to go with me. So that was about the only encounter I ever had, but it was big. I can't tell you how tall it was. I never could compare it to a tree. But it was huge. It would have been 3 or 4 of me, and I'm 6'2" and close to 300 pounds. And it was way, way bigger than me. But I never did get a chance to go look for it or anything. But that was it. That's my brief encounter.
Wow, Steve, that is some wild stuff. Thank you for sharing. So that you saw, it was about a football field length away, it sounds like.
I would say about 100 to 120 yards. But like I said, I never got a look at the face. It was walking away from me at about a 45-degree angle. I was angling off the right shoulder. But yeah, my daughter screams out, "Look, Daddy, somebody's pet gorilla got out."
Oh my goodness.
So that's
wow.
That kind of got my attention right away.
Did it have a shape to its head at all that you could see?
I tell you, there was no, I'm trying to think of how I would compare it to. Its head came down, the hair was long, the head kind of rounded, and then it was big headed and then went out to the shoulders. It wasn't like you could see a neck or anything. It was just almost like if you draped a sheet over it, that it would be just a slight definition between the neck and the shoulders and the head. It was almost like just more of a round look. I couldn't see ears. Of course, I don't guess my vision was that good that I could have seen ears at 100 and some odd yards. But all I remember was the white, or what, like I said, I'm assuming was supposed to be white, that was coming down the back of its head and was going down, if I remember right, going down the left shoulder. And it was just a dingy, musky yellow.
Did you notice anything about the arms or the hands at all? Could you see any details with that?
The arms were a little bit longer, I think. I think that's what made my daughter mainly think, with the fur and the longer arms, is why she thought it was a gorilla. Now the feet, I never did see the feet. I could see it from about the knee area up, because it was walking along the bank, which was actually, the bank that was there was an area that just floods every once in a while. It doesn't always stay water, but it floods quite often. So the grass gets pretty high there. And it was walking through grass, which would have been about to its knee level. So I never did see the feet. But I did want to get in my boat and go over there, and because I couldn't have got to it from where I was standing. I would have had to walk through a bunch of water, but I knew I could get there with my boat. And I wanted to hopefully get there and see if I could get some looks at the tracks or something, because by that time I could have gotten my boat and got the camera out and took pictures of it. I wouldn't have had any access to any plaster Paris or anything, but I thought it'd be pretty neat if I could have got some pictures. But then, of course, we went on with our weekend. It was just a little bit, probably 3 or 4 hours before dark. Then we started getting into the 4th of July stuff, and then taking the boat out, and everybody wanting to fish and ski and all that. And so we just went on with our weekend. But I told the stories, and one of my buddies here, he lives in Louisville, Kentucky, and he was making fun of me, and 2 of his uncles lived up there around Patoka Lake. And when he was telling them the story, his uncle told him, he said, "Mike, don't laugh." He said, "I'm going to tell you a story." He said, about 30 years ago, he said, me and a buddy of mine was out drinking. And he said, right there by Hoosier National Forest, he said, one jumped out in front of us about 3 o'clock in the morning. And he said, we looked at each other and we swore to each other that we would never tell the story. And he said, I've never said a word about it until just now. He said, so don't laugh at him. I seen it. And then all of a sudden now, he believes me now. He didn't believe me until his uncle said it was true. I get ribbed about it all the time. They always say, Bigfoot lately? I said, I've never said it was Bigfoot. I just said, I seen something that was really big and it looked like a big gorilla. That's all I know. But it had more of a man shape to me. I think it had more like it with the shoulders and everything. It wasn't like it was humpbacked and everything. It was standing upright. And it was taking good strides, the best I could tell. Like I said, it was walking through weeds. Around Hoosier National Forest, I don't know if you've heard anything about up around Hoosier National Forest or not.
Oh, yeah. I've talked to a few individuals that have had encounters in Hoosier, and there's a lot of activity in that forest going on.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, big time.
I'd like to see another one. You know, when I was young, I'm almost 70 years old now, but when I was younger, I spent a lot of time in the woods. And people, they think I'm nuts anyway, I guess, because I've seen bear where there's not supposed to be any bear. But then all of a sudden, a bear gets hit out on the road. Then all of a sudden, I'm not so nuts anymore. And I was hunting in Kentucky and came upon a mountain lion. And I told everybody, I said, hey, I was deer hunting, seen a mountain lion. They go, yeah, Bigfoot, mountain lions, bear. The next thing you know, guy gets a picture of mountain lion up here off 1638 by Fort Knox, which is just about 300 yards away from where I seen a mountain lion. Then all of a sudden, I'm not so nuts anymore. But nobody wants to believe me until something else has to happen to make it true.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for coming up. And is this a conversation I could play on the Bigfoot podcast that I have?
Oh, sure. Sure, anytime.
Awesome.
That's
well,
fine.
Keep us in the loop if you hear anything
I'm just waiting to see a spaceship now.
It could be coming. You never know. But thanks for chatting, Steve.
I'm telling you, the way this world's going, you don't know what you're going to see now.
Oh, I know.
But feel free to use it.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, pal. Bye.
Hey, sir. How are you doing?
Hey, good. I saw that you had a sighting in Colorado. Is that right?
Yeah, it was in Rio Forest near Bear Creek, but this was in the 80s, a long time ago. We were on our senior trip, and there were 6 of us, 3 guys, 3 girls. Only 3 of us saw it, 2 girls, 1 guy. I was the guy. And I'll be honest, I don't know what it was exactly. It wasn't a freaking bear. It wasn't a coyote or any animal I've ever seen. And it was gigantic. How tall it was? No idea. Distance and dark, just hard to judge.
What were the main things that you remember about it that made you think that it was a Bigfoot?
And pine cones and stuff into the camp. We thought it was squirrels at first. Squirrels would get upset when they'll throw stuff out of the tree at you. But we didn't realize what it was. Everybody was sleeping pretty much, and I got up, and the 2 girls that were beside us, they got up, and when they trained the flashlight down the hill towards where the noise was coming, and one of them was pretty clear, the back side of it anyway, but they moved like lightning fast, like 30 seconds completely out of sight. But it was the strangest thing I've ever seen. We went and looked where they were after, and we did find some deep impressions in the ground, not enough to make a cast out of because the ground was still hard. But until then, we didn't believe jack about it. And now, ever since then, I've been looking for stories that are similar. And I don't know. I'm not one to say that that we weren't hallucinating. Who knows?
Yeah, sure. They actually saw it in the flashlight, though?
Oh, yeah, I did too. I didn't have the flashlights. The 2 girls came out after I did because I thought a squirrel, I was going to make some noise and make them stop throwing the stuff on the tent so I could get back to sleep. And I heard grunting and banging and tapping noises, and the girls swung the flashlight around past me down the hill, and one of them was lit up. You could see his whole silhouette, the back side and maybe the left side of his face. But hard to make out because I'm serious. 30 seconds they were out of sight and we didn't hear anything else.
So you're saying there was more than one there?
Oh, there was a small one behind it. You couldn't make it out good because it was further down the hill and there were more bushes in the way, but there was another one. It wasn't just one of them. Was there more than that? I couldn't tell you.
Oh, wow. Did you smell anything the ordinary at that time?
Yeah, I had read about the smells and stuff. We did not, but it's windy. I don't know if the smell would have stayed around.
Sure. That area, the Bear Creek, Colorado area, is that a place that you ever went back to after that?
We were just there for the senior trip. I have been back to there, but not that exact area, no.
Gotcha. And have you done any research to see if anyone else has seen things in the same area?
I did. We asked a couple of people that were there and a park ranger, and they say they would get sightings periodically, but they always wrote it off as bears. But I don't know. It's so long ago. It was back 86, 87.
I want to make sure I have the right place. So you said Bear Creek in Colorado. Are there any other places near it that could be like a landmark or a town or anything?
Rio National Forest is what it's in.
Okay, let me look at that here. Rio National Forest. Oh, Rio Grande National Forest?
Yeah, I think that's what it was called.
Yeah, that's what it is. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I have the right place for documenting it.
And like I say, we were just on a senior trip. Our parents had funded it. We thought it'd be cool. We never went.
That's cool. I actually don't have any reports from this area, so I appreciate you coming up. And sharing what you experienced. Is this a story I could share on the Bigfoot podcast that I have?
Yeah, you can share it. I'm not ashamed of it. Heck, it happened so long. I'm almost 70 years old now, so
Sure.
it's not like I worry if people are going to think I'm crazy.
I don't think so, sir. And I appreciate you coming up and chatting tonight.
Oh, you too, sir. Have a blessed day.
Hey, Kimmy, how are you? I haven't gotten a chance to look at your pictures yet.
I'm good. I live in North Georgia, and there have
Okay.
been many sightings in North Georgia.
Absolutely.
But back in January, we had a major ice storm, and it was a big ice storm, and everything was frozen for about 3 days. And I don't have anybody that comes up and down my road except for me and my daughter. And one morning, I got up to take my dog out, and that's about all his deer tracks, animal tracks, or my dog tracks. And I'm always watching, and we didn't use my front steps because there was so much ice on it. We'd go out the garage door. But I always took the dog out off the porch. He would go down the steps. But when I got out to the bottom of took the dog out, I was standing at the top, and I looked down and noticed these footprints. And I'm like, who's been here? Because at first I'm thinking it was a boot print. But then when I got to looking, it looked like it had weird, you could see toes through it. It was very heavy prints. It was a lot of ice to go through. So whatever, it was heavy. It looked like human type feet. And if you zoom into the pictures that I sent you, you can see that there are toes in there. You can see how heavy the whatever it was is, because I am 150 pounds, 5'8", and I went out there and stomped on that ice because it wasn't there the night before. And I went out and stomped on the ice to see how deep I could get it. And I put a picture in there also of my foot next to that foot of me stomping. And I couldn't even get down to the bottom of the ice, but this was all the way almost to the concrete.
Oh, wow. And you said North Georgia?
Yes.
Are you able to share if this is like Chattahoochee National Forest or Northwest Georgia? Or
It's Chattahoochee National Forest.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I looked up local sightings, and they are all the way up from Dahlonega to through Helen, all the way up into where I'm at. And they are older sightings, but I have not seen anything. But one afternoon, I was in my bedroom, and I kept hearing this god-awful sound that sounded like a bear and a moose, almost like a gurgle. And I went outside to see if I could see what it was, because there are a lot of deer. We don't have moose here, but we do have bears. And it bellowed from the bottom of my property. And I wasn't stupid enough to go down to check it out. I wasn't going to go looking for this, whatever it was, but nobody could explain the sound to me. Because I got it on a recording, but it was very faint. Because by 4, that was like at 10 in the morning, and then by 4 in the afternoon, I could still hear it groaning as if it was injured.
Do you still have that recording?
It is on another TikTok that I have.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So I'll have to, let me make sure I'm following you, and I'll make sure I check that out. Wow, that's cool. Have you ever heard the story of what happened in Dahlonega?
Dahlonega?
Yeah, Dahlonega.
Is that the one that with the, I don't know, I've heard so many, I've researched so many, but I did see where there was one where people, I live at the foothills of like at the Trail of Tears.
Okay.
The foothills of the Appalachian Mountains or the Appalachian Trail. So you hear of a lot of people coming up missing and then finding their tents and their stuff and not finding them. But I've actually heard that somebody did a podcast or a video of people in Helen that had reported sightings, and there was quite a bit.
Helen has some stuff in it. The one that I heard And is it Dahlonega? I'm going to say it wrong.
That's
It's Dahlonega?
correct.
Okay.
No, yes.
So the story I heard on my show was that there was a Cobra helicopter crash, and then the soldiers guarding the wreck saw 2 to 3 large figures that looked like Bigfoot trying to get into the cockpit before pretty much they started firing warning shots at them, and that's what got them to flee or to get the Bigfoot out of there. And that was in the early 1980s.
Oh, wow. No, I had not heard
Yeah.
that story, but there is a police officer in Helen that was driving with a lady, and they actually got footage of something large running across the road. And they couldn't explain it. They turned around, went back to try to see what it was or to see if they could, and they did not. That one you can see on YouTube.
Yes, and
This was
that's
a police officer.
also
I believe that
that's
was
also
Helen.
in the first episode of Finding Bigfoot too.
Okay, and that's
Yeah.
right here, local where I'm at,
Okay.
which is really strange because I hear wood knocks, and we have actually down in LJ, they have a Sasquatch museum. So I went and checked that out because I was very curious about the pictures I took, and I didn't think about doing a casting or anything like that. But they look very similar. Especially where it looks like on the side of the foot, that maybe the fur. I don't know what those imprints on the side of the foot would be. But they were very interesting. But if you
Let's
zoom
see.
in, you can see the toes. You can see where the fur. I don't know how to explain the side of that foot where it looks like. I don't know what it would be, but they look like it's different. But I can tell you, I've lived in the forest long enough to know what a deer, a bear. I've had bear prints. They have claws. Okay, I've had bear prints. I know what deer tracks. I know what everything looks like pretty much. And this I could not explain. And there wasn't a person there was no tire tracks. I live on 10 acres of land. Okay. Somebody would have, and why would anybody go barefoot in an ice storm and it come from the woods and back into the woods? It came up to the porch, stopped at the bottom of the steps, and then went back into the woods. Why?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No.
Absolutely.
No.
I'm going to definitely check out those photographs once I get off this
Please do,
live
because I'm
later
really
tonight.
curious.
Yeah. And I'll let you know what I think, Kimmy. But thank you for coming up. Is this a conversation I could put on the Bigfoot podcast that I have?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. And keep in touch if anything else happens out there.
Okay, will do.
Before we wrap this episode, I want to say something directly to a very specific group of listeners. If you're in the military, any branch or forces, and if you've seen something that no one can explain, or if you're a national park ranger or forestry worker who's been told to stay quiet, or if you're a pilot who's seen something strange down on the ground, or if you're with the FBI, a federal agency, or working intelligence, and you stumbled upon something you're not allowed to talk about, and if you're a firefighter, paramedic, or search and rescue responder who's heard screams or found tracks that didn't make sense, if you're in the logging industry, on a remote oil field, or a trucker with government contracts, and you've had something happen that you've never told a soul, and if you're a biologist, a wildlife specialist, or a field researcher under contract who has found evidence you're not allowed to report, if you're a pastor, a missionary, or someone on a spiritual retreat, and you saw something that shook your faith, or if you work in the shadows, CIA, NSA, or anything with clearance, and you've seen what the public hasn't, then I want to talk to you. Even if it's anonymous, you can reach me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. The world needs to hear what you've been forced to carry alone, and you're not alone. You've got the story. We've got the mic. See you in the woods. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Every encounter we share reminds us that the world is bigger and stranger than we think, and that the truth is often hiding just beyond the tree line. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and share this with a friend who's into mysteries, monsters, or the unexplained. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please follow the show there and leave us a 5-star positive review, because all that helps more people discover the show. And remember, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot sighting, please, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's start the conversation. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, check out our membership community over at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And that's where you can hear tomorrow's episode today, early and ad-free, and members-only episodes every week. Also, it's a place to connect with other people that are into the Bigfoot subject as much as you are. Thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.